Say his name. Eric Garner. Say his name. Eric Garner. Say his name. Eric Garner. Won't you say his name? Trayvon Martin. Say his name. Trayvon Martin. Say his name. Trayvon Martin. Say his name. Won't you say his name? Say his name. Say his name. Say his name. Won't you say his name? Say his name. 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 Won't you say his name? 90.7 WTCC. Won't you say his name? Say her name. Say her name. Won't you say her name? 90.7 WTCC. Good morning and welcome to the Spoken Word radio broadcast on this Labor Day weekend during COVID. Very interesting time. No Stone Soul picnic here in the city. Things that we would normally do on Labor Day. Although I saw some folks that were out, man. They were out. They were doing some things. I hope y'all was staying safe. Y'all out here acting like ain't no pandemic around here. We're still in a pandemic, brothers and sisters. Let's not get relaxed. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about election 2020 in the midst of COVID and what's at stake for Black America. We've got to understand that as tired as we are of COVID, we can't be acting like ain't no COVID happening because it is. It's still here. It's still among us. It's going to be among us for a while. And don't believe the hype. 46 minus 1 pretending there's going to be a vaccine this year just so he can try to get votes. Stay safe, brothers and sisters. In any case, do me a favor. I need you to like. I need you to share. I need you to subscribe. I need you to tell a friend, tell somebody that the Bishop is on the air. I should have all y'all up in here just like under normal circumstances. See, normally, if we weren't in the middle of COVID, then I'd say, well, you know, folks they got the day off today, so they may be sleeping late. They're not on their way to work or doing their normal Monday routine, so they may not be on. But y'all don't have no normal routine anymore. At least some of y'all don't. So you should be up in here. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, comment, start a watch party. Let everybody know Bishop is up in her. Okay, I'm up in here today on this Labor Day edition of the Spoken Word. And last Tuesday was primary day here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we'll talk about that. Some upsets that happened during that campaign. But I want to give a congratulations out to all of the winners of that election, the primary winners in that election. I was a supporter of Joe Kennedy's. He did lose the race to Ed Markey. I'm hoping that means that we won't have to wait another 7 years to see Ed Markey. Yeah, see, when he first ran for the seat that was vacated by John Kerry when he went to be the Secretary of State for President Obama, he came through the Black community in Springfield. He came to my church. He met with Black preachers, all of that. Then the next year, in 2014, he ran for re-election, no opposition, so he didn't bother to come around. He's been in there 6 years. Haven't seen or heard from him in 6 years. Now, I'm not beating my own chest, but if I, as a black pastor of one of the most socially active churches in the region, the president of the Greater Springfield NAACP, one of the most socially active preachers, not only in the region, in the nation, I haven't heard from you in 6 years, from your office, from your campaign, about an initiative, about legislation that you're sponsoring, about anything that you're doing for the Commonwealth, nothing that you're doing for the black community. I haven't heard from you literally since he's been in office. Then I know the average black person out there hasn't heard from him. I know his constituent services in Springfield, in Western Massachusetts, left a lot to be desired. But then he came back around looking for votes this time. And so my message to the Markey campaign was that while we may not have necessarily opposed you based on your voting record, you can't ignore black people and then come around when it's time for election and think that we're going to support you. Now, I know that there were people who were saying, why would you support Kennedy? Markey is more progressive. Markey was AWOL. I'm just going to keep it a buck. AWOL. By contrast, his contemporary in the Senate, Elizabeth Warren, is constantly in contact. Her office is constantly in contact with what she's sponsoring, what she's doing, when she's coming to town. She frequented Western Mass, engaged the constituents. Markey had none of that going on. So for those of you who wanted to know why I was opposing Markey, that's why. Because you can't just ignore black people for 7 years and then expect that we're going to vote for you because you're down with AOC and the Green New Deal. Sorry. Doesn't work that way. So anyway, I got off on a tangent right there. But congratulations out to Orlando Ramos, who went from being my ward counselor. I supported him 3 times when he ran for city council. He lost twice and ran a 3rd time and got on there and served with distinction on the council as our ward counselor, as the president of the council for 2 years. And he won the seat in the state house. So he's now going to be my state representative. So congratulations out to him. Also, congratulations out to Denise Hurst, who ran a formidable campaign and who has served for 11 years with distinction on the school. And although she lost that race, we are happy to still have her on our school committee. Congratulations out to Adam Gomez. Adam won a seat in the state Senate, the first person of color from this region to serve, first Afro-Latino to serve in the Commonwealth in the state Senate. And for years, we have had one person of color. For years, it was Diane Wilkerson as the only black in the U.S. Senate. And then she was replaced by Sonia Chang Diaz, who has been the sole person of color in the state Senate. And now she'll be joined by Adam Gomez, representing us here in the city of Springfield and other surrounding towns. And so congratulations, a hard-fought race. And also congratulations out to Jimmy Welch, who served with distinction for many years in the Senate and also as a state representative for his service to our region. Congratulations out to everybody who won. I thought I'd highlight those 2 races because they were important races in our city. Listen, tell somebody we're on the air. I'm going to be coming up very shortly with women in the NAACP. We're going to be talking about the election. We're going to be talking about what's at stake. I'll have Senator Eric Lesser, who will be calling in with our monthly State House update. We do that once a month, so you know what's happening in the State House. Don't dare touch that dial. Stay right here where you are. We'll be right back.
Talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me, yeah. Talk to me, talk to me, yeah. Talk to me, yeah. A positive attitude says everything about you. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Every day you get up, you've been given a gift. That's why they call it the present. And it's up to you how you unwrap it. So yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. So don't let the pain of your past bleed into your present and poison your future. Stop replaying the movie, why did this happen to me? When it's done with you, be done with it. If it seems like you keep running into pigeons, it's an indication that you're flying too low. So set your sights a little higher. Remember, eagles fly by themselves. If you can see the invisible, you can do the impossible. Allow your challenges to be a stepping stone to propel you into new possibilities. So be discontent with your past accomplishment. You're only as great as your last success. So maintain your hunger and your passion. Remember this, within every seed there is a tree. In every tree there is a forest. Who and what you were born into is simply the environment to prepare you for your ultimate purpose. It was not a setback, it was a setup. Your purpose and potential is bigger than your past pain or problem. Dedicate to you. Listen to your heart, don't let your mind fool you.
That's the sounds of Ferris Hill. That's Daddy Talk, one of my favorites. A lot of wisdom in what he's talking about there. You ought to pick that one up. Listen, I've got guests that are backstage right now, and before I bring them up, let me kind of set the tone for our conversation today. In the middle of COVID and in the middle of an important election season, there's a lot at stake. The reality is this, brothers and sisters. Like I said earlier, some of y'all were out there yesterday acting like COVID didn't exist out there doing your cookouts. I mean, it's a big party up in this neighborhood. And I rode by and I'm like, man, they don't believe that COVID is actually out here. I mean, it's had a disastrous effect on the entire country. But it is hitting people of color, particularly Black people, hardest. Charles Blow, writer for the New York Times, noted earlier this month that in cities with a Black majority or Black plurality, New Orleans, Milwaukee, Chicago, other places, Black people represent 70 to 80% of the COVID deaths, but their percentage in those cities are nowhere near that. And so we're dying at higher rates than other races. We're risking our lives more because many Black Americans are deemed essential. And, I hear that term, essential workers, but I tend to think that they really mean expendable workers. And unlike some of our privileged friends, sheltering at home or with family members instead of at a remote beach house or something just doesn't fit with our budgets. And so as the old saying goes, when America gets a cold, Black America gets pneumonia. And so COVID has upended life in more ways than one. And it is intensifying. We're hitting a second wave of it. They're trying to pretend it's getting better, but it's getting worse here in America. And listen, that is one of the key issues of concern during this election season. How is the next president going to deal with the COVID epidemic or the pandemic of coronavirus? Systemic racism has produced the disparities that we've seen in COVID-19. And it makes the election system that much harder to navigate. There's a push against the U.S. Post Office, against mail-in ballots, knowing that COVID is out there. But we've seen some results in this last election. We've seen here in the Commonwealth, here in our city, we've seen the numbers double with mail-in voting. Um, and there's an attempt once again to try to suppress our votes. And what's more important to know about Black voters in 2020 is that they understand what's at stake with the current person that's in the White House, the danger that he represents, this pandemic running rapid in our country, the economy being devastated, everything that's going on in our nation. We've got to understand exactly what is at stake. And what's at stake is more than Trumpism. Uh, that yes, we can get rid of Trump, but more than who is leading the country, the democracy itself is in serious jeopardy. There are other disparities in health, education, housing, wealth, criminal justice that continue to persist. And as Black voters, we've got to be well aware of each of these crises, and we be concerned with what's happening with them. So let me bring up my guest. As I stated before, I will also have State Senator Eric Lesser joining me. This is my wife right here. Y'all, she got glasses on and stuff. It look like she's trying to pose or something. I don't know what's going on.
No, can't see.
All right, this is First Lady Cynthia Swan. And okay, where you at? There you go. And Lady Ayanna Crawford, two of the ladies who work with us in the NAACP and who have worked on voting initiatives in terms of registering voters, educating voters, and then getting voters out to vote, to early vote, to mail-in votes, all of that kind of stuff. And so we're just going to kind of have a roundtable discussion. We'll be joined shortly by the senator and continue that conversation. 413-337-1867. We'll put the number up on the screen shortly to get you engaged in the conversation. But first, ladies, what do y'all think about this last primary election that happened here in Massachusetts on the 1st of September? What are your thoughts?
I'll yield the floor to Ayanna first, because I might have a little bit more to say. But I yield the floor to her first.
All right. Good morning, Bishop. Good morning, First Lady. Certainly, thank you. God bless you. Certainly excited to be on this show this morning. And certainly good morning to all of your viewers. I was very excited to see sort of the playing field, some young folks that we possibly might not have thought that could have won their seats. And so I was very thrilled and excited to see the hard work that went behind both the campaigns, Orlando Ramos and Adam Gomez. They worked hard. They both are people. And so they did their door to door, and they really brought a different, I believe, a flavor to the political landscape. It wasn't about holding a sign or just having these robocalls. They went door to door, talking to people, asking them how they feel, wanting to engage with them on the political process, and making sure that they understood how their vote really does matter. And I thought that was really unique for them, particularly in this day and age where folks are so afraid of COVID, going door to door, or just not being able to get out because of the scarcity of the COVID virus. So I thought that was really unique, and that they won their respective seats. And so now we have additional voices at the state house and at the state Senate too, as well, that are more reflective and more diverse, and that our voice will be heard. And so I certainly am excited about their vision and their platform, and how they're going to really make sure that not only Springfield, but folks of color, our voices are authentic, and they're being, brought to the table. So it's not just someone saying something because they think they know our community. They really know it, they lived it, and they are going to bring something very unique. And all of us that voted for them, we're going to make sure that they do the right thing by us too, as well. I'm going to be very fully engaged.
What I think is unique about both Adam and Orlando, winning their respective races and both going to the state house,
Mhm.
is they both served as ward counselors.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
many may be familiar, but some may not be. For many years in the city of Springfield, we had an all at large system. And in
Right.
that all at large system, it basically diluted the votes of
Mm.
Black and brown people. And we would literally have, out of 9 city councilors, we'd have 8 white and 1 person of
Mhm.
color. Uh,
Mhm.
and most of those whites were from wards 6 and 7. So even
Right.
other predominantly white wards weren't even represented. We
Mhm.
fought 12 years to get ward representation so that it would
Mhm.
be representative of the
Mhm.
constituents of a particular ward, and
Right.
we could increase the number of people of color. So Adams served in Ward 1, predominantly Latino community.
Mhm.
Orlando served in Ward 8, a fairly
Mhm.
mixed community. And
Mhm.
so they understand
Mhm.
um, the value of representing a particular part of the constituency.
Right.
And so them going to the state house, they bring with them that particular experience
Right.
with them. And I think that's critical, and I think that's important when they go, so that because oftentimes people go and they feel like, well, I'm representing everybody.
Right.
They go with
Right.
the experience of knowing that I have a particular constituency that I have to represent.
Right. And like you said, that's very unique. They are both ward reps on our current city council. So yes, that's a very unique piece of the puzzle. And so they bring that to the state house. So you're absolutely right, and I certainly agree with that too as well.
What I think is important
Hmm.
for us to understand is that Black people are going to play a pivotal role in
Mm-hmm.
shaping the country, not just in this election, but
Hmm.
over the next decade. Uh,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
is why, though it isn't getting the attention it deserves, a fair and accurate count during the 2020 census
Right.
um, is vitally important for us. It's going to provide information
Hmm.
about how many Black people are actually living in the United States,
Hmm.
because we've been undercounted
Right.
in the census so many times. Something that disproportionately
Hmm.
impacts Black men, women, and children in particular.
Hmm.
It means that we learn less about problems facing our community. We're less
Hmm.
represented, and so when we talk about the next decade, we've got to make sure we're counted in the census, and we've got to make
Hmm.
sure we do all that we can so that our votes get out there. First Lady, you dropped off. Did you go to make me breakfast or what? What happened?
Yeah, yeah. I apologize, Ayana and Bishop. First, I have to back up and say good morning to everybody. I'm
Yes.
running into some technical difficulties, so I'm not sure if I'm coming through well, but opposed to speaking more specifically about the candidates, and congratulations to each of them who won their
Hmm.
races and elections.
Hmm.
As highlighted Ayana. But I wanted to speak more specifically about the work that we've been doing
Hmm.
and how I think it was definitely reflected in the election. Um, so Operation Vote, uh, objectives were to certainly give education about voting, information about the candidates and voting and why it's important. Um, Registration was our first objective because we thought that we needed to register more voters, and I need to speak specifically about that. And then certainly inspiration, because what we're finding is that we have more than enough registered voters here in Springfield. We have well over 102,000 registered voters. And if the census is correct, which I don't think it is, and we have 150,000 people living here, it accounts for like 48,000 children 18 or under. that wouldn't be registered to vote, and we know that that's incorrect. There are people out there eligible to register to vote that are still not registered, but that's much less of a problem than getting people polls, and especially suppression as is, and complicated by the pandemic. So well, the state, the Commonwealth, be trying to make it easier, but it a little bit with especially with the Republican interference and the presidential interference. Case in point,
Mm-hmm.
um, of course, we know that that there's been mass interruption, federal
Mm-hmm.
interruption of the post office. Nobody
They just
trusts the post
removing
office,
post office
and we
boxes. That's
also
all,
know that the
Right.
extent.
And
I'm sorry, Bishop, can you not hear me?
No, I can hear you. I
The
just said
extension
they just
deadline for the census was, oh, yeah, yeah. But the extension deadline also for the census was for 31st. The
mm,
president interfered with that as well. And so the
right.
new census deadline is September 30th,
Mm-hmm.
potentially keeping millions and millions of people from census, which we also know that that's about interfering with the voting process, the national
Mm-hmm.
election, and that's
Right.
also about interfering with black and brown people
Mm-hmm.
from filing their census. A lot of black and brown people don't understand how important it is to
Mm,
be counted and to file their census. I understand that we don't trust the government. I
mm-hmm.
get it. But I understand that when we don't participate
Mm,
correctly in both the voting process and filing our census, that can have some very negative, very negative
mm-hmm.
impact to it, such as the last census filing, which is only done every 10 years. We lost a representative. We lost a
Mm-hmm.
representative because we didn't have enough people to say that we needed another one. So that's an issue. That's an issue, and I do know that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are not filing their census again because we don't trust the census. We don't
Mm-hmm.
trust the
Right.
government, and that might be
Right.
the reason why people are not voting. We've
Mm-hmm.
kind of interviewed, surveyed the landscape when we found out that registration is not the problem here.
Right.
That inspiration, in other words, people doing what they need to do to make sure that their vote is counted, is
Mm-hmm.
more of the problem. And then we found out that people are not educated about the process. That doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
they're ignorant. It's just complicated now. It's not as
Right.
simple as just voting. They want to know
Mm-hmm.
what they're voting for, who they're voting for, and what does it mean for them and their family directly, specifically. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really grateful, Bishop, that you allowed us to come on because
That's right.
just in that month of work, which we've done,
Mm,
we God has really blessed us to be able to do a lot of great work in the last 5 weeks or so. So we did the voter registration drive. We had a lot of people in the community, a lot of good
mm-hmm.
people in the community, and they told us we just don't feel like it makes a difference. We just don't feel like it helps me or it helps my
Mm-hmm.
family, or
Right.
just
so
don't
I,
feel
I
that
think
way.
I think we've got to
But
make the
also,
case. I think we've got to make the
yeah,
case though that
Mm,
uh, um, voting is not just about every 4 years when someone is running for
mm,
president.
mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
underscoring how local politics does affect them. See, I don't think a lot of our people really understand uh,
Mm,
how local politics affects them. How much you're paying for that trash fee,
right,
uh,
right.
whether the potholes on your street get get fixed, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening at your children's school, what is
Right.
the
Mm-hmm.
property tax rate that we pay for property tax and excise taxes here. There are a lot of things that local politics that does affect your everyday quality of life. And I don't think they're making that connection because they're just looking at presidential politics going out every 4 years. And that's why we have to underscore it's important for us to vote in every election, not just the president is being elected.
Well, absolutely. And we totally agree with that. We found too that a lot of people get involved or they know because they spend a lot of money. The government a lot of money, to get people out to vote for the presidential elections. And most times that's the only thing they know about. So just about everybody we spoke Trump and Biden, everybody knew that their opinion on everybody don't know that the Democrats, I am a Democrat still, with an independent voice, but I'm a Democrat. But nevertheless, they don't know that our desire and what's really important to this election, just a tad bit more important than Trump, is flipping the Senate, And so there's been debates about that. Even yesterday, we was in a discussion, and and I was saying to my spiritual mother, I was like, Mom, if we can get control of the House and if we can get control of the Senate, we will have more power, to push the agenda that we think is more fitting to our values in the Black and brown communities. So I said, so that will kind of depower, if you will. I don't know the exact language. Even if people are crazy enough to put Trump back in office, he still won't have the kind of power that he does right
Check and balance.
Case in
That
point,
puts a balance on it.
Republican Senate kept him in office. And a lot of people don't understand that process. I'm gonna admit, I'm gonna be very transparent. Through the last 15 years or so, I've learned a whole lot more about the governmental process by getting involved, and staying involved, but also watching all of this stuff. When Obama got into office, or whatever, we saw this country turn upside down. And so it really taught us a lot. I mean, it really started teaching me a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of people are like me, and then, there's some people that's just apathetic, and some people that's just like, I'd rather not get engaged, because it is complex, it's discouraging, hurtful, especially if you're Black. Black and brown, or whatever, it's hurtful. This stuff is hurtful because we really do see, the racism in the government. We really do see how it's embedded throughout this nation. Yeah.
Let me bring into the conversation who's on for our monthly State House update. Senator Eric Lesser is backstage, so let me bring him up.
Morning,
Senator. How you doing?
Morning. Happy Labor Day.
Same to you. What's going on?
Just getting ready for the event at 11 at City Hall that we're doing. They're doing them all across the state. So of course the biggest one is in Boston, but we're doing one in Springfield at 11. So just getting ready for that, and looking forward to our monthly call-in.
Tell them what that event is, so those who don't know.
Yeah, so it's put on by the Pioneer Valley Central Labor Council. So that's a coalition of labor groups, progressive groups from actually across the Pioneer Valley. So not just Hampden County, but Franklin County and Hampshire County and Berkshire County as well. So it's a very big organization that includes a lot of different groups and organizers. So they'll all be there. Normally, there's a breakfast that they do every Labor Day at the Castle of Knights in Chicopee. Of course, this year we can't gather indoors for a breakfast, so they're doing an outdoor rally, which I actually think is more in keeping with the spirit of Labor Day anyway. So we'll be outside doing that at 11. And of course, it's open to the public. Anybody who wants to can be there.
All right. Thank you so much. So what's happening at the State House?
So, it's really kind of a wild time, Bishop. I mean, normally at this time in the legislature, we're out of session. So normally we go out of session July 31st. And of course, elections start. The primaries are always typically in early September. And then the general election, of course, is always in first Tuesday in November. This year, the House and the Senate agreed to actually suspend that rule that brings us out of session on July 31. So we're staying in session to handle coronavirus. And we have quite a lot of issues that are really in active negotiation right now. Probably actually about a half dozen major conference committees. Of course, police reform, which we've talked about a lot on this call-in program before. I have a bill around economic development and economic re-empowerment after the coronavirus pandemic that's pending. There's a major environmental bill pending. So we're trying to get these bills completed. A big healthcare bill is also under negotiation. So the hope is in the next few weeks, you're going to see some major legislation. And on top of all of that, our annual budget. Normally, we conclude the budget in July. Because of the uncertainty around coronavirus, we did temporary budgets month after month to keep things at least level until we understood what revenues were going to be coming in. And the hope is that in October, we're going to do a budget for the rest of the fiscal year through next July. And not to get technical, but it is important for all of the programs and especially schools that we care so much about. The August tax numbers came in, and actually they were above some of the worst predictions, which is good news. So hopefully if that stays steady, we will be able to have a budget for the coming fiscal year that will certainly not be a good budget, but it's going to be a lot better, I hope, than some of the worst case scenarios.
Okay. Well, I know there were some dire predictions around that, especially during this time of year. And it's hard to know, what's really happening because there's a lot of spin going on in terms of because folks want to make believe the economy is better than it is for election purposes. And so, it sometimes becomes difficult to know, exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and I'd point out, like in Massachusetts, for the second month in a row, we have had the highest unemployment rate in the entire country. Say that one more again. In the entire country, Massachusetts, for the second month in a row, has had the highest unemployment rate, over 16%. And part of the reason for that is we did have virus numbers here. People, of course, we remember, but we have to remind people, in March, April, May, we had some of the absolute worst numbers in the whole country. And a lot of our sectors of our economy, higher ed, tourism, our service sector, have been decimated by this virus. And we know it's been felt most acutely in our gateway cities and communities of color and our immigrant communities. And so you're right, Bishop. The concern here is that as the federal government backs away, again, just absolutely atrocious, how they've backed off, for example, extending unemployment benefits. We're going to have a lot of downside risk here, which is why we decided to keep the legislature in session so that we'll be able to do budgets, we'll be able to do policy bills as these issues come up, and we wouldn't have to reconvene. We're already meeting and we have that process in place. But, there is some optimism, if the numbers stay low, and that requires everyone kind of doing their part, we will be able to begin the process of really rebuilding a lot faster.
Now, you mentioned what our numbers were for COVID. COVID-19 is one of those key issues that's at stake in this election. Many have accused Trump of fumbling the response to the pandemic. He just tweeted out this morning that he's got very high marks in handling of the coronavirus, in parentheses, China virus, especially when compared to other countries and areas of the world. Now the vaccines are coming in fast. So there's this constant spin on the handling of the pandemic. And this is going to be key in this upcoming election, because if this guy has really fumbled the ball in terms of handling. And now we're headed fast toward 190,000 deaths in our country. What's going to happen if it gets 4 more years?
I don't want to think about it, but we do have to think about it, actually, because we need to continually remind people of the stakes here. But, frankly, I don't think that the country I go back to President Obama's masterful speech just 2 weeks ago at the Democratic National Convention, where he spoke from the Constitution Center in Philadelphia. I mean, something I'd actually recommend. He has such a calm demeanor when he speaks, and he really kind of puts people at ease. But if you actually go back and read the text, I did this a few days ago. I'd really recommend people go back and read the actual text of what he was saying. Incredibly serious. A former president saying that if the current president is reelected, the very foundations of our constitutional system will be challenged and will be under threat and may not survive. I agree with that, but it's shocking if you think about that we have to be in that place in the year 2020 in America. Just one example, Bishop, the politicization of the vaccine. The idea that you're now talking about a vaccine conveniently being ready in October,
right?
Election year, when every expert has said it takes at least a year to 18 months to develop, is really alarming, and it's going to cost lives because people are going to question whether the vaccine is safe or not. So, on every level, you look at what's happening with voting rights. You look at what's happened with the CARES Act. I mean, the idea that in the middle of the worst economic crisis since the Depression, 70 years ago, that we would turn off extended unemployment benefits for people who lost their jobs out of no fault of their own. I mean, this is essentially a natural disaster, what struck our communities. Is just unfathomable. So, we just had intense primaries, and you and I we're working on several primaries this past Tuesday. My feeling is that's over. We now have really a galactic battle in front of us with November approaching very fast.
Absolutely. The other thing is that's important is Massachusetts became a leader in the nation when the legislature voted to go with all mail-in ballots, to basically scrap the absentee ballot, give everybody who wanted an opportunity to do mail-in ballot. How important is that in terms of what it did in terms of leading the nation in that, Senator?
Yeah, so I would actually, I'll text it to you, Bishop, or email it to you, but there's a great New York Times article that actually summarizes and goes over the Massachusetts voting experience from last week. And I know you and I have talked about this several times. I was a co-sponsor and the lead Senate co-sponsor of the primary election mail-in ballot measure that we passed back in the spring. And I think what we were saying at the time is if you create opportunities for people to vote safely and you make it convenient, people will vote, and they're going to vote in high numbers. We had 1.4 million people statewide vote in Massachusetts in the middle of a pandemic. They did it safely. It is by far the highest turnout in 20 years. And what you saw locally is some big results. I think the Senator Welch, Councilor Gomez race is an example of what happens when turnout changes and when you have large numbers of people who had previously either not been able to vote or couldn't do so easily or didn't work for their situation, able to vote and do it securely and quickly and safely. Again, safely is important. How it works. So there were definitely kinks. There were some issues. There was some confusion with some clerks about what could be counted, what couldn't. The congressional race out in Eastern Mass, the Massachusetts 4th race, wasn't concluded until a few days after the election. There was some confusion there about which ballots were able to be counted and which weren't. We've got to fix that, and we've got to get more clarity on that. But overall, I think we've had a test case here of how a mail-in system can work well, and where everybody can have confidence in the outcome.
Absolutely. Any parting remarks, and also give them your, of course, give them your information They need to get in touch with your office.
Well, thanks for having me on again, and just want to wish everybody a happy Labor Day. I mean, certainly it's the last day of summer. This afternoon I'm going to bring my daughters out for some fun activities, but it is a day off for some, not everybody, but it also is an important day to mark a struggle for equality, for empowerment of working people in our country. That struggle very much continues to this day. So we should all take a moment to mark in our own way that and do what we can to keep fighting for justice and for equality for everyone. As always, please reach out to me. The office number is 413-526-6501. Again, 526-6501. I'm on Twitter at Eric Lesser, on Instagram at Eric Lesser MA.
I see they gave you your blue check on IG now.
Yeah, now I'm official. And then we've got the old-fashioned email works too, which is eric.lesser@masenate.gov. Again, eric.lesser@masenate.gov.
Okay, Senator, my wife has a question for you. She kind of fizzled out upstairs, so she's down here to the man cave. I don't know how I get her in the camera not, but she's got a question for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Senator, if you got a chance already to answer this question, but Operation Vote, the women in the NAACP, we're out and we're, conducting some work in the community around information, education, inspiration, and certain registration around voting. But we're definitely tying in how important it is to file your census.
Sorry?
The census.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So can you speak to the importance of filing your census, particularly in Black and Brown communities, where they do have a distrust level concerning the census? Can you speak to that before you move?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ms. Swan. And I've been following your work too, and certainly keep me posted how I can lift up or partner on that. But just to quickly talk about the census for everyone listening. I mean, just to back up for a second, the census is actually in the Constitution, and it says that every 10 years a count is made of everybody who lives in the country, to put it simply. And that is basically the framework and the foundation for almost all government aid and support programs, and really a whole host of other social service and government programs, from HUD support, community development block grants, how we apportion districts and determine both congressional seats and state legislative seats. It's really the anchor at which all other government work and programming is built. And you're absolutely right. First, we have a 400-year history in America, unfortunately, and it's a dark history of undercounting or not counting at all communities of color. That continues today. We know that those communities, especially low-income communities, communities of color, immigrant communities, are the most likely to be undercounted. And you add on top of that the challenges of the pandemic. We could spend hours on this, but they had to cut back in-person counting, for example, when the pandemic started in March, and in many places have not put those in-person counters back. So there's serious concerns about there being an undercount. We need people to cooperate with the census counters. I know this is a challenge often in communities that justifiably have some mistrust of government officials knocking on their door and asking personal information, but the census is very important. And we do have a coordinated effort, at least here in Massachusetts, between community groups, civil rights groups, voter empowerment groups, and our state government to try to get that number as high as possible. But again, it's a big concern, and it's something that we really need the community working with us on. So your efforts in that regard are really so important. Frankly, down the line, if we're even if, let's say, President Biden wins and we're able to get some of these big important programs passed, if we don't have accurate counts of who needs that help or where people live in our communities, it's going to limit or even blunt some of the impact.
Right. Right. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
All right.
See you over Zoom. What's this program, Bishop? This isn't Zoom. This is
This is StreamYard here. So we kind of go between the two of them depending on what the need is. We'll be on Zoom on next week for the NAACP Freedom Fund event. But we'll see you soon.
All right, take care. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. So Ayana, tell me what's the next phase of work in terms of the upcoming November election.
So as First Lady, I know she's right behind you. So we've got a lot of great initiatives that we're going to be putting forth. And of course, we want to certainly say something publicly. We want to thank the community, first and foremost, for coming out for the official vote commercial that we did on the steps of City Hall. We want to say thank you to everybody. And so that is going to be another piece that we're going to add on. And so we're going to redevelop that commercial to really get out the vote and help people understand about the need to vote. And so we're going to do another commercial. So we're going to get the community involved in that. So be on the lookout for that. We also are going to be doing another rally. And so we're looking forward to connecting with organizations and really getting the vote out. And so that's going to happen on September 19th. We really want to encourage the community to come out and hear some speakers. Of course, Bishop, I know you're going to be one of our speakers. And also, the census, we're going to have a table about folks getting, signed up for the census. So it's going to be a great day to really encourage folks to come out and vote. And then we also have another virtual event happening too as well. And I know First Lady can speak to that. And so we have a lot of up and coming events that we really want to encourage the community to participate in. The women in the NAACP vision and inspiration and empowerment is such that we want to empower, because as First Lady said, we know that people are registered, but they're just not voting. And so how can we get them coming to vote? And so we decided as a collective body of women that we have to inspire, we have to empower, and we have to motivate people. So doing these events is really going to help that. And so again, the First Lady can certainly speak to some of the other events that we have coming up, but we're excited. And I think that, if you would allow us now and until the election to come on and inspire and encourage your listeners and others that we can bring on to be on this show to encourage people to vote. Because like you said, and like State Senator Lesser said, it's about the things that happen after the vote. It's not just going to the polls and voting. Your vote really has a tangible attachment. Property taxes can go up. There's so many things that affect your vote. And so we have to be engaged at this time. And I wanted to ask Senator Letcher a question too, but I think we should have a conversation at one point about what's really the difference between the popular vote and the Electoral College. We really have to sort of delve into that, because we might need to change that structural process. So that's certainly a later conversation, but I'd love to get into that. But certainly, encouraging the community to come out to the women in the NAACP, all of our events that we're scheduling to have. And we're certainly looking forward to being a part of the virtual Freedom Fund that's happening on September 17th. We want to, be a part of that and be there to support all the executive board members and all the folks that are doing the hard work like yourself on the ground to encourage social justice and encourage people to vote.
All right. The other thing is the work that you all are doing. Many groups have been doing that, to in a somewhat limited way for many years. There's a push during this season around activism, around voting, and in some ways, it's even creating sort of a competition. In my estimation, the more the merrier. I don't think that it's problematic. If many groups are working on the same thing, as long as they're reaching the same goal. And so I want to say to our listening audience, listen, just because I'm doing it doesn't mean you can't do it too. And just because I'm doing it doesn't mean I'm in competition with you. This isn't about exposure. It's not about notoriety. It's not about clout chasing. It's about getting work done. Much work can be done if we don't care who gets the credit.
Right, exactly. And there's so many national platforms around that Black women are standing up and saying, we've got to start an initiative around voting. There are so many Black women around the country that have said, we've got to do something around voting. So we can all be a part of this. In particular, in Springfield, we have 156,000 people. So if we have multiple people, multiple groups doing this voting piece, it is, like you said, more the merrier. You know, we should not be beholden by certainly an idea that can be expressed by so many people. You know, everyone has an opportunity to, you know, get involved, express your views, your ideas, your vision, whatever it might be. But you do have to come with a sincere heart. You know, you can't just do it because, like you said, about this clout chasing, it's me, I want to get the credit. It's not about that. You know, I would prefer personally to be behind the scenes, to say, you know, what can I do to help those that want to help our community? And that's it. You know, and I think we all should be about that. But as you stated, that's not always the case. But certainly, you know, we have to be engaged. This is the time. If any time in our lives that we have been sitting on the sidelines and not engaging, this is the time to engage. Not only because it's a pandemic, because the stakes are higher. We've got to get rid of 45, and we've got to figure out how to move in a very different way in terms of the election. You know, you cannot continue to say, well, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. No, your vote does count. It does matter, and you have to get engaged. And so that's why, you know, the women in NAACP want to encourage, inspire, and really motivate people to get out and vote. You know, and I know we've got some other ideas that we want to do, and I'm sure that Sister First Lady will expound upon that. But we're willing to, you know, get you there to the polls. If you don't have a ride, you know, I would be willing to do that.
Let me get some remarks from her, because we've got to sign out of WTCC in the next 2.5 minutes, and we'll continue on with the streaming audience. But while we're still on the air, First Lady, any other remarks you want to make to the WTCC listening audience?
Yeah. First of all, again, thank you, Bishop. I just wanted to thank the community, and I don't know, because of the technical issues that I've been experiencing. So I don't know if y'all hit on this, but we did. We helped to get the community out to vote in the primaries. It hiked up another 20%, which is outstanding, considering, you know, we had just a couple of thousand people to vote last year, to take the time out to go to the polls and to vote last year. So a mere 7.6% of people made all the decisions concerning our political landscape. But this primary, 27% of us, which is a huge hike, came out. 27,000 people, over 27,000 people came out and voted in the primaries. So that's a tremendous hike, and the community did that. And it wasn't just the women in the NAACP that helped with that. It was just regular people. Everybody matters. Every BODY matters. You know, so if you care about your community, if you care about your family, then you need to get involved in politics, get involved in what's going on politically, and participate in the election process. So we got a lot of work to do. If only 27% came out for the primaries, that means that we got 73% of people that we still need to motivate, educate, and inspire to get to the polls November 3rd. There's no reason why every registered voter in Springfield cannot submit a ballot. There's no reason. And we do want to say this too about voting. Vote early. The earlier you vote, the more reliable your vote, will be counted.
Hold that thought. We've got to sign off WTCC. To my WTCC listeners, remember the NAACP Freedom Fund on the 17th of this month. go to our Facebook page, and I need you to go ahead and register for the Freedom Fund Symposium. Dr. Freddie Haynes is going to be our speaker. Our Holy Convocation is this week starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It'll be streaming live. So check that out. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you, and so do I. The rest of you all, let's see, looks like about 100 and something of you that are on here. Stay with us. We're going to be right back after we sign off WTCC. All right, we had to sign off from our audience on WTCC. We simulcast this with WTCC remotely every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, thanks to our remote director who assists us in that. So shout out to Jim, our remote director, and to all of the staff at WTCC who really have been persevering throughout the 6 months of this pandemic and still bringing you quality programming despite the limits of not actually being in the studio. So just being able to be here in my man cave and come to you all, it's been a blessing. And so we're here. All right, we want to continue on with our conversation. 413-337-1867. Let me put the number up here because I know some of you all probably been frustrated because, you know, Bishop ain't put the number up, ain't let us call in or nothing like that. So let me get that up there. Let me get some of your comments and stuff up here, and let me bring the ladies back on. There they go. All right, so we're all in the house now. We're all in the house. 413-337-1867 is the number here. So if you want to call in, what's at stake during this election? I talked about COVID being at stake. One of the other things that's at stake, we have to remember criminal justice is still very important. The reform is very important. And the First Step Act that they boast about was not real criminal justice reform. Got to remember the First Step Act really only dealt with certain convictions in the federal prison. There are 1.3 million Black and brown people imprisoned in America, mostly in state prisons. And so the 2,000 or so potential people that could benefit from the First Step Act is but a drop in the bucket in terms of the real problem with the criminal justice system in America. And the other thing I need for you to understand is Trump's proposed budget, which just came out. Check this out with a drum roll. Proposed to fund the First Step Act with $0. Yeah. So when they start bragging about criminal justice reform, the First Step Act, all that kind of stuff, please understand that the commitment is just not there. And so that's another thing that is really at stake in this national election. The other thing is protecting civil rights. We celebrated, and I can't underscore this enough, the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act recently. We talked about the legacy of John Lewis, him marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And what we often fail to mention is the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. It is currently non-enforceable. There is legislation before Congress now, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that has not been acted on. The Senate, Mitch McConnell, has no intention on acting on it, which is why it's important that we flip the Senate. So right now, we don't have a Voting Rights Act that's enforceable. So there's a lot of things that are at stake in this election. Can you ladies think of anything else that may be at stake in terms of people who think, it doesn't make a difference if I go out and vote or not? What's at stake in their lives?
Well,
so I think right now there's can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
So I think right now there's for Massachusetts in particular, there's some questions on the ballot that we really need to pay attention to. And I think, I think it's every maybe 4 or 5 years, there's always these questions on the ballot. And so for November, we need to pay very, very close attention to the 4 questions on the ballot this year. And so I want to read the questions. And then, of course, as I'm sure your very highly intelligent viewers will take it upon themselves to do some research. And so the first question on the ballot this year is going to be the law to implement ranked choice voting in elections. We've all probably heard about it, but what does it mean? And so I think we need to take a second look at that. The second question on the ballot is going to be about law establishing adequate funding for residents of Massachusetts nursing homes. That's another question on the ballot. So please take your time to research that and decide where you fit on that issue. The third question is the law to enhance, update, and protect the 2013 motor vehicle right to repair law. That's very critical. So please take your time and research that question. And then the fourth and final question, which is very interesting, it says a law relative to the sale of beer and wine by food stores. And so I know I will definitely be against that. I do not agree with food stores selling wine or beer. That's my opinion. I'm going to stick with it. But anyway, those are the 4 questions. And I think we all need to do our research and to see where we stand on those particular questions. And maybe we can delve into them a little bit if this panel would like to. But I think that's at stake, some of those questions. What is it going to mean for us in the future?
Okay. First lady?
Well, Ayana so eloquently spoke to what's going on in Massachusetts as far as those questions are concerned. But I think the police reform bill, any social justice bills that are being introduced, reparations is big for me. African American, so many other issues, equal pay as a woman. It's so many other issues that have been dismissed and overlooked and even discarded that President Obama had introduced or tried to pass, or whatever. And the first thing that the Republicans did was toss out everything that they could, or whatever. Or President Trump did was try to toss out everything that he could. So, reinstate those things, expand on some things, revise some things, introduce some things, but it's just so much. It's massive. It's extensive. Because racism is extensive, white supremacy is extensive. So unfortunately, these issues are embedded in everything that we need, every resource that we need, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's housing. Housing is horrible here. It's horrible here again, but that goes back to how important it is to file our census and to get politically involved. I have a lot of clients that need to move, that need to have better housing, and they cannot. So that impacts our mental health. The fact that, it's almost impossible to find good, fair, affordable housing in this area. But again, it goes back to us being politically involved. I was thinking that with a lot of the apathy, people say, well, my vote don't count. And it's like, that's the one thing that we have, it's blood on it. It's definitely blood on it.
Right.
It's blood on, our ability as Black people to vote, or whatever. So Black people died. They sacrificed so that we can vote and participate in the process. They knew how important it was to our quality of life. They made the connections. They knew how important it was. But nevertheless, that's the one thing that everybody, regardless of their socioeconomic background, have one of. So your vote counts just as much as the president's vote counts. Your vote counts just as much as, Bloomberg's vote counts. He only gets one. And he has influence just like you have influence. You have influence over your family. You have influence over your cousins and them, or whatever. You have influence over your community or in your community. Your vote counts just like everybody else's. So to say that my vote doesn't count and it doesn't matter, and then you sit back and you don't participate, you're doing exactly what they want you to do.
How much of that? How much of that among us is actually people who think my vote doesn't count? That it's not important whether or not I vote. They're going to do what they want. And how much of that is just folk just being lazy, not wanting to go to the polls, being apathetic? Because I venture to say there's a lot of that going on too. They're just some I ain't going to vote, and they're just being apathetic and not going to the polls. And like case in point, there are people out here talking about voting for Kanye West. Kanye has never voted in his life. He has spit on the graves of our ancestors who bled and died so he can have the right to vote. And in his whole adult life of 40 some odd years has decided he ain't going to vote. And now you want to run for president and want people to vote for you. I mean, for real, how much of that is just apathy among us? And how much of it is real and legitimate?
I think what happens is there's a generational gap.
I'm sorry, Ayana.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to use the word lazy, Bishop. I wouldn't want to use the word lazy, but I would like to use miseducated and misinformed. So a lot of that, I mean, like if people are willing to go and vote for somebody, if they have not been educated, if they have not been educated and informed, given the right information, they could be easily misled.
But see, my thing is this. I got a real, and maybe it's just because of the way that I came up that my mother just told me you going to vote. I got a real problem with Negroes who will stand in line for the new Jordans. Or stand in the long line for the new iPhone that comes out, literally. But can't go and take a few moments out of their morning to vote, or act like they don't have time when the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can't carve out 10 minutes in 12 hours. It may be different now because of the COVID or whatever, but I'm talking under normal circumstances. They're open at a 12, 13-hour clip, and you can't figure out 10 minutes to stop by and priority. Stand in line for the Jay-Z concert and everything else.
It's priorities and value. It's what you place your value on. So they place their value and priorities on the latest and the newest sneakers, right? They have not placed value on voting. Why? Because they don't value voting. And so if you don't value something, you're not going to stick your head and you're not going to take the time out to do it. And so we have to change sort of the trajectory and the notion of what we value. And so if we're not valuing voting, we're not valuing that vote counts, that my vote matters, we're not going to do it. We know that those Jordans are hot. We know that people are going to say, "Ooh, you look good." We value that because we want to be popular, or we want to, let everyone know that we can afford this. And so they put the priority and the value on something that they feel is necessary for them. And so they have not prioritized in their mind, nor have they valued voting. And so that's really the reality.
I love it. I love what you said. Sister Ayana. Value is what we value. Now, you were fortunate enough, babe, to come up, and I told you this before, to come up in a home to where your mother valued the process. Not only did she value the process, your mom was an activist herself. She knew the process. She helped to make change, to bring change to the community by using the process, by participating. You know what she used to say? you know, you know what she used to say. I can't say it on the air.
Don't.
But
My mother, it was a saintly woman. So don't be. She's a saintly woman. Don't.
All of our mothers were. All of our mothers.
She still is. She's a saintly woman. She only talked
very saintly, but she knew what to say to tell her children, and now her grandchildren, and now her daughters like me, you know, or whatever. She knew what to say to tell us, you know, that Black folk died so that we could vote. It's a dishonor for us not to, when so many of our ancestors, our mothers and our fathers, in our culture, in our race, they died so that we could, and then we don't do it.
Right.
Let me get to this caller. Caller, you're on the air. Caller, you're on the air. Hey, my caller hung up on me. You got to hold the line. 413-337-1867 is the number you want to chime in. Yeah, I admit, you know, I'm fortunate that my parents were engaged in the process. But I think as each of us grow older, we ought to be maturing. And you would be astounded by the number of Black people in their 30s and 40s who will say, I've never voted. The other day, I found out that someone in their 60s, I've never voted. Who knew what it was like when Black folk couldn't vote. Still never exercised the right to vote. And I know there are folks who are saying, well, you know, why vote for one racist over another racist? Listen, here's the thing. And it's because I have so much experience with dealing with Black people who face racial discrimination. When you come to me or to the NAACP and want us to advocate for you in your case, because the prosecutor is trying to prosecute you on bogus information or whatever, you realize that district attorneys are elected. That the people who serve as assistant district attorneys are appointed by people who are elected. When you have that problem with the housing authority, you do realize that those people who sit on that board in many cases are appointed by people who are elected. And so, I mean, it runs the gamut in terms of who holds the levers of power when you have problems in the school system. You do realize that the superintendent of schools reports to an elected body. And so to hold him accountable, that's the body that holds him accountable, people that you elect. There's far too much that elected persons hold in terms of influence over your life to be apathetic about voting, but then you want to come and get help when your family or you or your loved one is running into an issue with somebody who was either elected or appointed by somebody who was elected. And I don't know about y'all, I just got low tolerance when I'm sitting in the barbershop and people are having political discussions and they're complaining about everything that's happening in the city. And then when I say, well, did you go vote? Nah, man, I didn't vote. Well, the conversation's over. I don't even want to talk to you no more. Is that just me?
No, that's not just you. I believe that is in the gamut of everybody. I think it's also folks are selfish, they're selfish. They don't, like you said, I mean, unless something really impacts them, they don't want to get engaged. They don't want to be involved. People are selfish. They're very narrow-minded. They don't believe that the vote itself, the physical voting, is going to affect them. They don't see it. They can't envision it. And so, however, like you mentioned, as soon as something happens, they're calling, the NAACP, they're calling every type of social organization. They're calling the city. They're saying, I need this, I need that. But we're trying to say to you, you've got to engage, you've got to vote, you've got to participate, because those things that you need are going to be able to be availed to you if you do. It's the same thing about, if you're working, you pay taxes, don't you? You know, you don't have the right to say, I'm not paying taxes today. I'm not going to have those taxes taken out of my check. That happens automatically. And so perhaps maybe we need to think about folks having to mandate voting. Like you cannot not vote, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Black folk can't
perhaps we need to change.
Caller, you're on.
Good morning, everyone. I had to hang up earlier. I was just on the call, but I had to hang up. But I want to go back to when Cynthia was explaining to Ayana and you, Bishop, about, you know, it being brought up in your home to be educated and taught to go out and vote. And as a participant in Drive and speaking with people individually at their homes, and I'm here and asking coworkers, and the negativity that I was receiving was baffling to me. So my question that I want to put out there, is there a Black person who thinks that they could be exempt from not voting? I want to hear what you have to say to that, because I want an explanation to give to other than we have people in our lineage, in our own bloodline, our ancestors died, and we cannot not do it. But there's some people, I believe in their minds, that they think they're exempt from voting because, and I'm baffled by it. So can anybody address that? Is there some Black people who, okay, you're exempt, this reason gives you cause, you don't have to vote anymore?
I'm gonna let we'll start with First Lady, and then I'm gonna pull some stats out that's gonna blow your minds in just a moment. All right.
Thank you, Bishop. You can pull the stats out first.
Go ahead.
No, you can pull the stats out first.
I need time to pull them out.
Yes.
Answer the question.
First Lady.
Run the show.
Okay, so personally, in answering your question, Sissy, I absolutely cannot think of a case where, you know, I would feel comfortable telling, especially if they are African descent, a person that has the right to vote or that is eligible to vote. Because everybody, you got to remember, voter suppression is real. That is not some made up phenomenon. Voter suppression is real. So they do everything that they can. The government, the Republicans, you know, I'm just going to call it out, you know, white supremacists or whatever, they do, and they engage. They spend a lot of money creating instances to keep us from being able to vote, you know, which is another reason why we should fight for our right and use our right to vote. So that's something that I say too. They're not spending all of this money, and they're not creating situations to keep you from voting for no reason. Like, they wouldn't do that if your vote didn't matter. You know, if you came to the conclusion that voting collectively has power, you know, if you became informed enough, empowered enough, or educated enough to know that your right to vote could really change things, and you using your right to vote could really change things, you know, or whatever, they're not spending all of this money and voting and creating suppression for the right to vote and file your census for nothing, you know,
34 Republican attorney generals did not go all the way to the Supreme Court to nullify the Voting Rights Act for no reason. There's a rationale. There's a reason why they wanted to get that nullified, and they wanted to make sure that all of those districts and municipalities and states that were mandated to get pre-clearance by the federal government before they could enact suppressive voting laws no longer had to do that, because they wanted to go back to being able to suppress your vote legally without recourse. There's a reason behind that.
You just brought up something else, Bishop, that I think is really important in this conversation. Trump has been in office 3.5 years, you know, 3.5 years.
Too long.
Yeah, it's been way too long. And this man has to see, and this is something that, again, people are not educated, informed enough. I mean, it's information that I got recently, or whatever. He has appointed 198 judges across the nation. All right. So he has the right to appoint Supreme Court justices. He has the right to appoint appellate judges and district court judges, right? 198. Can somebody tell me how many of them are Black? And just because if they were Black, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would support a Black agenda. But nevertheless, how many of those 198 judges are Black and maybe promote the concerns of Black and brown communities? How about zero? None of them are Black, and none of them support a Black Lives Matter agenda. None of them support that. That's the other thing that we need to consider and we need to think about when we are voting.
And they're all anti-civil rights judges. All of them.
It's really important. It's really important.
And here's the thing. Judgeships are not like elected positions. They are on the bench for life.
Right.
Until they either retire or die. So
once they're elected or appointed.
So they are there for life. They're going to be there for generations. So when he appoints somebody who, case in point, you look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg and others who are more aged, and you look at judges serving into their 80s and 90s. So when he appoints somebody like a Brett Kavanaugh, who's in his early 40s, and who could potentially be there for 40 or for the 50 rest of our lives. Years,
right?
This is what we've got to understand. He's changing the face of the judiciary. So when cases like the Voting Rights Act go before the federal courts on a lower level or on a Supreme Court level, depending on what that makeup is of that judge or those judges, depends on the outcome of that case. And this is what we have to understand. And while we're fighting other things on other fronts, Mitch McConnell and the Republican-controlled Senate, they're confirming his judges left and right, just like they were blocking Obama's judges left and right, over and over and over again. Here's one for you. Cousin Lisa from Chicago says about Kanye. She said Kanye had no excuse. His mama was an African-American studies professor.
Thank you.
He definitely knew the importance of voting. So he kind of was like me. He had a mama who knew what time it was, but he still ain't vote.
Right.
So it can run either way. So let me give you these stats. These are the stats. Go ahead, say what you want to say. I want to give you these stats because they're going to blow you out the water.
I just want to connect while Bishop is looking that up. I just want to connect the fact that these 198 judges are also the same people that are residing over the courts that overly incarcerate Black people as it is.
Right.
And also support this racist, corrupt policing system that we have already. So when you say, especially as a young Black man, young Black woman, or whatever, and that the criminal justice system is corrupt, but you don't go to the polls and vote. You don't go to the polls and vote, and you don't strategically vote, and you don't collectively vote. Listen, if you don't know who to vote for or how to vote, follow Black women.
Yeah.
Follow Black women.
Well, now that
follow Black women.
That is an important point in terms of why should I vote? Now, when you're complaining about police, most police chiefs are appointed by mayors who are what? Elected. When you get sentenced, you get prosecuted by a prosecutor who's appointed by a district attorney who is elected. When Pookie and Ray and them get sentenced, they get sentenced by a judge who may sentence them based on their racial makeup, and that judge is appointed by a governor or a president who is elected.
Right.
Come on, y'all. You can't play around with this thing acting like you going to the polls and voting has no impact on your life or the life of the people around you. It has a very profound impact on your life every single day. Check this out. Trump won Florida. These are the swing states that gave him the electoral college in this election, in the 2016 election. He won Florida by 113,000 votes. Now check this out. 113,000. Do the math. 113,000. Guess what? In Miami alone, we're not talking the whole state of Florida. He won Florida, the state, by 113,000. In Miami alone, 379,000 Black people didn't vote. Okay. He won Michigan by a measly 11,000 votes. Won the state of Michigan by 11,000 votes. In Detroit alone, 277,000 Black people did not vote. He won Pennsylvania by 44,000. 44,000. In Philadelphia alone, 238,000 registered Black people did not vote. And in Georgia, he won Georgia by 211,000 votes. 211,000. In Atlanta alone, 530,000 Black people did not vote.
Talk about it.
Talk about it.
People alone going to the polls in 4 cities.
Major cities.
In 4 cities in America, okay, could have made the difference in that election. If Black people in Miami, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Atlanta had gone and voted in greater numbers in 2016, we wouldn't have a Klansman in the White House right now.
So I think that that's really important to stay right there just for a second concerning the mentality and the mindset with voting. I happen to know, unfortunately, and love a lot of Black people that stayed home and did not vote when Hillary was running against Trump. They said that they bought into the whole thing that she was no different or no better than Trump. They bought into that. They bought into the fact that she was a liar, or whatever, scammer, just the perpetuating the whole white structure, white supremacist system, just democratic. And I'm hearing that again this time. Somebody said just the other day that Biden is no different than Trump. And this was a celebrity, a Black celebrity. Roland Martin, as a matter of fact, said that Biden was no different than Trump. He was just a Trump. He was just a Democrat. And I beg to differ with that. So a lot of the people that stayed home and didn't vote for Hillary, for instance, was people who wanted Bernie Sanders. And so I'm going to be transparent. I initially was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I initially too was a Bernie Sanders supporter after the Obama years, if you will. However, when Bernie came and he endorsed Hillary and Black women got on board with endorsing Hillary, that's when I changed my mindset and I said, I'm going to do what my candidate said do. And I'm going to also follow the course and vote collectively with Black women, or whatever. So Black women ended up being, as you know, Bishop, ended up being the biggest voting bloc, and throughout, Black women have been the backbone and the biggest voting bloc, excuse me, that the Democrats, the electoral process can depend on, period. Mm-hmm. So about 96-97% of us voted for Hillary. We was the only one that voted that huge for her. White women, I haven't forgotten this, and you know, it hurts my feelings to this day that like 54% of them, 58. Okay, I'm sorry, 8% of them voted for Trump, and that sends a huge message about the separation and the segregation of Black women's values as opposed to maybe even white women's values.
Listen, I just keep it a whole buck.
Okay.
A whole buck.
I'll let him say it. I'll let him say it.
White feminism is nothing but white supremacy in heels.
Well, you know, I totally agree because we can see it. We can see it. We can see it in how we vote. You know, we can definitely see it in how we vote. So
yeah, and see, and my thing is always, and I know Black men take a hit, even though 87% of them voted against Trump because of the 13% that went with him. But I always check the liberal white women who try to come for us. Well, if I've had some of them tell me, well, if Black men hadn't voted for Trump like they did, he wouldn't be in office. I said, hold up, sugar. 58% of your homegirls and your sorors and your mama and them and your grandmama and them and others voted for him. Don't you come for Black men. You must be out your mind.
Although, babe.
No, I don't make any excuses for the brothers that went that way. But I'm not going to let white women try to check us in terms of how we vote.
Right. Y'all. But
Black women think they can check us for anything anyway.
Black women can check y'all, but no, white women cannot. White women cannot. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, no,
I absolutely agree with that.
No. I tell them all the time, no, because until y'all get all your peoples together, that's who you need to be talking to.
But your point is, and my point also, that we're trying to drive home is that if y'all didn't stay home, if you Black folk didn't stay home, and I'm talking about all around the country, if y'all didn't stay home and y'all had voted strategically like we had decided to do, Trump would be in office today. He already didn't get the popular vote, but he wouldn't have got the electoral college either. It would have been impossible. But I'm gonna tell you the other missing piece to that. The other missing piece also is the fact that we wasn't, and we're still not. I don't believe that the census is correct and accurate when it comes to counting Black people, Black and brown people. That is, I think it's top heavy. I think, for instance, because I heard of a case recently here in Springfield where you know how you have Hispanic, but then you have different categories of Hispanic, and white is one of them. So a lot of census takers, this is what I heard now, it is third-party information, but I heard that a lot of census takers is marking Hispanics as white. So, so they may be brown, they may be even, Black, or whatever, but
that's a whole other conversation because there's a whole lot of Hispanic.
It ties into the census.
No, I get it.
Ties into representation and ties into, our count in voting.
Yeah.
In voting.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I also know there are a lot of our Hispanic or Latino brothers and sisters who want to consider themselves to be white.
I know that too. I know some Black folks that want to be considered white.
Yeah, they can't get beyond.
But I want to say something. I'm going to jump in here. I'm in the middle. So I want to go back to what you said, First Lady, and I believe Bishop said it too. This notion of the protesting vote. That's what I'm going to call it. The ones that stay home and decide, and I'm not voting for anybody. We cannot do that in this election. We cannot protest voting, or we cannot stay home and protest your vote without being involved. And so I would say, I just wanted to extract that out a little bit, because people do that because, so-and-so, like you said, Hillary is similar to Trump, and, on all this. We've got to decide on which candidates that we are going to vote for, and collectively create a list or say, these are the folks that we're going to vote for. Why? Because they're sort of the two lesser of two evils, right? We have to have something.
I mean, that's the reality of our
it is the reality.
America. I mean, the bottom line is this: if somebody, asks me, do I want to be tortured to death,
right?
or do I want to drink a harmless, well, not harmless, drink a concoction that will kill me, but wouldn't hurt? I'm gonna die either way. But
right.
Being the punk that I am, I'm gonna choose the concoction. And,
right.
If I got
the two,
that's how I'd rather go. I'm not gonna be like, well, it don't matter. I'm gonna die either way, so I ain't for either one of them. Just kill me how you want to kill me. No,
you got to have a choice in the matter, and that's what we're saying about voting. Absolutely. You need to have a choice. Absolutely. And your choice is your vote.
My wife's up here just messing stuff up. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bishop. Thank you so much for having me on the call. This is Zeta calling in. I had the pleasure of working with these ladies in the last couple of weeks regarding the election and the voting process and all that. So I'm really excited that the women in the NAACP are active and encouraged to continue to educate the people. As you always say, and I always say, we have to vote in every single election, every single time, because that's the only way that we're going to make the real systemic change. So I'm just really excited about it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Zeta.
Right,
thank you, Zeta. And Zeta didn't mention, but she's also one of our new members of the Women in NAACP. And we thank Zeta for her hard work and her dedication and what she's done over the years in terms of her activism, being involved in so many different organizations that are really sort of at the core of making sure that folks in Springfield have the necessary needs met. And so we thank you, Zeta, so much for your comment and certainly for being engaged at this level.
So what do you say when you go wherever you go in public and the folks tell you, well, I'm not voting because of ABC, or I didn't vote because of ABC? What do you tell them, Ayanna?
Wow.
Check them.
I try to tell them as much as I can. So sort of the three key things that I say, I talk about our children. If you have children, making sure that we have a better future for our children and our grandchildren. That's number one. Making sure that the things that you're talking about and you're complaining about, that you have a leg to stand on. Because if you're complaining and you're saying you want change, what did you do on your behalf in order to affect that change? Did you vote? Did you participate? Because if you didn't, you can't complain. You can't say anything. And so that's the second piece. The third piece is, your vote is economics as well. Everything that is changed or redone has to do with economics. So we're talking about property taxes. We're talking about raising taxes. Did you vote? And so if you didn't, again, you have nothing to say. And so you've got to deal with what has been established and or created based on you not participating. So if you had voted, perhaps you could have had a say in whether or not we would have had an increase on our property taxes, an increase in whatever type of tax. So you have to engage. And so those are the three things that I try to sort of mull over and elaborate and clarify in talking to whether you're older, mature, what have you, young people that are just learning the process, getting to register to vote. Those are the things that I really express upon to them, because again, your vote matters. You have a say if you are engaged. And if you're not, you have nothing to say. You have nothing to stand on. And so those are my things that I would say. And I would say even more if given an opportunity, if I have some, resistance, if you will, if they're resisting and saying, well, I can't do it, I don't see it, then we'll go into the second phase, of what I need to say to you, and go into the third phase and the fourth phase until I break you down, that you really understand that your vote really matters and it counts. And we know in terms of elections, If we looked at in Boston, my good friend Julia, and I know you know Bishop, they did a recount when she ran first time for city council, and they did the recount, and she won by 1 vote. First Afro Latina to be on the city council in Boston. I mean, how cool is that? And she did a lot of work here in Western Mass. So I'm just pulling her up as an example that your vote does count, your vote does matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just want to piggyback off of that just a little bit and speak more specifically, in detail with how we've seen changes happen here in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And, babe, you can speak to this more specifically than I can, but
it's Bishop Swan on the air.
Okay, well, it's Bishop. You can speak to this more specifically than I can, but I think about what we look like as a city council, and school board, about 20-25 years ago. Well, I've been here 32 years ago, and the only Black person that I knew of for sure was the state rep. What was the ward? What's the ward Uncle Ben was in?
Maybe Twiggs, Henry Twiggs.
That then? No,
it was the 9th Hampden district at that time.
It was 9th at that time. So that was the only Black person that I seen in politics. In the local government. But since ward representation and NAACP and other organizations were involved in that fight, or whatever in that struggle, we've seen changes, we've seen differences. Orlando and Adam came from the city council, and a big reason why they came from the city council was because of what happened 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, or so, or whatever. So a lot of people of color on the city council today. So that's starting to change. The government is starting to change. And I believe that really soon we're going to see our first African-American mayor. It's crazy that it's 2020 and we've never had an African-American mayor in Springfield. But nevertheless, I believe that really soon, as things continue to change, we're going to see our first African-American mayor, and, and some other key positions, a person of color, Black or brown, or whatever case may be. But things are beginning to change, and that's because people are participating in the process. And so if you don't participate in the process, you won't be able to push the agenda that includes your values in it. You won't be able to push a Black Lives Matter. You won't be able to get behind a state representative and push for reparations. You won't be able to push, adding an African-American history curriculum, to the school, but you can do this now because we're getting behind candidates and we're getting behind people that we voted for and put them in positions so that they can push the agenda that people in the community want to see.
Listen. If Black people can vote in the NBA All-Star balloting because they want their favorite basketball player to be on the All-Star team, if they can vote somebody off the island on a reality show, if they can vote for folk on Sunday Best or whatever these singing shows are, whoever they want to, to go to the next level on the reality show. We always voting for something somewhere. Then you can vote for who represents you on the municipal level, on the state level, and on the national level, because all of those votes are far more important than whether or not gets to the next round or not. Or so-and-so makes the all-star team. They are far more important. Let me pause right there and push this again. If you have not registered yet, NAACP Freedom Fund Symposium that will take place on the 17th, a week from this Thursday, you need to go to our Facebook page, click that link on the event, register for the event. We're going to have a presentation on prostate cancer. We're going to have some other entertainment, and we're going to have a keynote speaker in Dr. Freddie Haynes on that day. You want to be a part of that symposium. Also want to invite you all out to the annual Holy Convocation of the Nova Scotia Ecclesiastical Jurisdiction, Church of God in Christ. Our pre-musical will take place. It will stream live on Wednesday. We have Pastor Ruby Holland all the way from Memphis, Tennessee, who will be preaching on Thursday. And then Pastor Bishop J. Lewis Felton from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's the first vice president of Philadelphia NAACP. He'll be preaching on Friday night. Then Saturday, check it out. Saturday is a full day of events. At 8 o'clock, we're going to the track at American International College. We're starting a health and fitness challenge. We'll be doing some exercising there at 8 a.m. at the track. Come on, get out. Y'all been lazing around during this pandemic. All right, it's time to get in shape. Hey, y'all been lazing around during this pandemic. So let's get out to the track at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, we're going down to City Hall. City Hall, there's going to be an unveiling and a painting of a Black Lives Matter mural, but we'll be giving out masks for the people at 10 o'clock. We'll have a table. We'll be giving out masks. Then I'll be speaking to the audience at 11 o'clock. Councilor Tracy Whitfield is leading this effort in terms of the mural, and the speaking program starts at 11. And then at 12 noon, we'll be in our workshops via Zoom virtually. Bishop Elijah Hankerson and Bishop Vincent Matthews will be with us at 12 o'clock and at 1 o'clock, respectively. So a full day of events on Saturday, but the entire convocation will be Wednesday through Saturday. So I want to invite you all out. I'm going to let you ladies have parting remarks because my back hurt. I got to take some pain medication and I need to get something. I need to get something to eat. Listen, don't get older, y'all. You know, don't get. I'm just trying to prepare y'all when you get over 50. I know I don't look a day over 30. But when you get over 50, man, stuff starts. You find out you got body parts you didn't know you had when the pain starts coming to them. But I'm gonna let you all have the final remarks, and then we're gonna transition out.
I just want to remind everybody that September 19th is a tentative date that we plan on having a census event. It'll most likely be hosted at the Sprinkle Hope Church of God in Christ, located at 35 Alden Street. So any vendors, hopefully the weather hold up and it still be nice enough to be outside. So any vendors that would like to participate, you're welcome to participate. We'll do it like we did during the voter registration drive. But nevertheless, we want to focus on registration. We want to focus on getting our ballots in, dropped off in the ballot box, not put in the mail, but we want to get our ballots. We want to get our ballots mailed to our homes and filled out to be dropped off, whether we have to pick them up or whatever, but to be dropped off and put in the ballot box or delivered to the election office. But September 19th, and we will have a schedule or a calendar of dates throughout the month of September and October to distribute to everybody that will solidify our event dates and whatnot, building up until the national election November 3rd. Did I forget anything? Ayana, did I forget anything? Oh, okay.
Okay, good. So, no, you did a good job. So I wanted to just quickly say, echo everything that Sister First Lady Swan said, but I want everyone on your social media platforms to do hashtag Together We Win, hashtag win, hashtag voting, hashtag Operation Vote. We want you to do that. Why? Because we want to raise the awareness of voting. And we want to raise the awareness of win. And so Together We Win, hashtag vote, hashtag Operation Vote hashtag. And make sure you're following us on social media, because that's where you're going to hear a lot of these things that are happening in our community. And so we are excited. I'm excited to be with First Lady, working in partnership and collaboration with her and the women that are part of this group. And so we're just excited to extend an offer and an opportunity to all of the women and men to come and be a part of the NAACP, be a part of resurrecting this arm of the NAACP, which is the women in the NAACP. We're excited. We thank Bishop for allowing us to do this. And so that we're here to participate, engage, and do all that we can. We've got 156,000 people in our city. And so we want to make sure that everybody comes out to vote. And with that also, Bishop, if you don't mind, if I could just do a quick plug for the Moss is having their walkathon on Saturday too as well at 3:00 at AIC.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, let's not forget also that at the Black Lives Matter event on Saturday, that Tracy Whitfield, Councilwoman Tracy Whitfield, they're also giving out backpacks and school to needy students. So bring your children down if they need school supplies, if they need backpacks. I know everything is by remote this year, but they still need supplies.
Exactly. And then also NAACP, we were going to have clipboards for those of you that want to register to be a member. We're going to have clipboards and with the applications. And so we're going to have that I'll be there at, I think 1, Sister Swan, you're going to be there at 11.
No, 10. I'm going to be 10, but I have to leave for 12. I have to leave.
For 12. Okay. So we're going to have applications for everyone that wants to join.
Volunteers down there though.
Okay. Applications for NAACP and to participate and win. So we want to make sure that we, advertise that too. And we can also have a table, Sister Swan, on the 12th at AIC at 3, if you all want.
I just want to shout out before we leave. We've seen a lot of amazing queens doing some great work around voting and getting people out to vote. We've seen some senior queens that was out there. They had their t-shirts on. They had their signs. They was telling people to go and vote. Listen, we may not know you by name, but we see you and we thank God for you. Everybody that's trying to help to make the community better.
That's right.
God bless you. God bless you and order your steps and order your behavior, the whole 9. We thank God for you. We thank God.
That's right. Springfield Vote, 413 Vote, all of those organizations that are doing some great work. Continue to do it. We have enough room for everybody to do something around Operation Vote. Thank you so much.
All right, there you have it. We're going to sign off. Listen, thank you so much to the entire viewing audience that stuck with us all this time. I see a bunch of y'all are still on here. Good morning to all of you. Marcos Perez, Karen Stovall. I see my friend and classmate in the Episcopacy, Bishop Dwight Walls is on here. I see you, Jules Howard. You got on late, but you got on here anyway. I don't want to start calling names because there's too many of your names to call, but I always appreciate each and every one of you who tune in with us every Monday. Remember, convocation this week, so there'll be no virtual Bible study on Wednesday. We'll be in our musical celebration on Wednesday, Women's Night Thursday, our official night on Friday, all the events I highlighted on Saturday. Go to the NAACP Facebook page, register for the virtual symposium that's happening. And then on Sunday at 11, we're always streaming Sunday at 11. I'm out of here, y'all. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember God loves you, and so do I.
Won't you say his name?